Here to help us break down what steps the U.S. should take for the American worker is Jennifer Streaks, an expert on personal finance and affordable lifestyle. Jennifer, I'm really glad you're here today because this is one of those issues that directly affects a lot of people. A lot of times when we talk about this in politics, it's just not the case. It's more theoretical. But right now, people are kind of in a hardship. So I just want to kind of get broadly right now. How do you grade the administration's response in kind of dealing with those hardships that a lot of Americans may be facing right now?
I actually like the fact that the administration is moving so quickly to get checks out to the American worker. Over the past, I want to say 48 hours, you saw tens of thousands of people just lose their jobs with very little notice or no notice at all. So the fact that the administration wants to step up and just put money in the hands of Americans, I think, is the right move.
And when it comes to that, too, because I've been wondering this myself, how do those Americans get those checks? Is it something that they'll get in the mail? Is it something they'll wake up one morning and it's in their bank account where their employers kind of front the bill for now and they get reimbursed? How does that work as far as maybe the procedure goes?
I'm thinking that you may have to register or sign up on a website because, of course, you have to verify your address, and then it just comes right out. It's going to be a U.S. Treasury check, and it just comes right into your mailbox.
Gotcha. That's what I've seen for the most part. A lot of reports saying that, but it's kind of hard to find exactly what the plan is. I guess still as it's kind of being worked out by the government too. But I also want to talk about housing because that's something too that isn't on a lot of people's minds. Rent is coming up. A lot of people don't have savings to kind of make it to pay rent without a paycheck. So the White House says that HUD is suspending foreclosures and evictions until the end of the month. Are there other tools that they can do at their disposal to kind of alleviate this burden for Americans right now?
I think right now we should be taking a look at what New York is doing and having Cuomo saying that basically mortgages are going to be suspended for 90 days. And that should be what we're doing. And I will say this too, if we start to get, coronavirus under control in 60 to 90 days, do not send a bill or invoice out for 60 or 90 days worth of bill payments, whether it's rent, mortgage, utilities, credit cards, because people aren't going to have it. They just aren't going to have it. These are people that are unemployed, underemployed, hours have been cut. I actually think that this should be a forgiveness period for the next 90 days, just whatever it is, we're just going to forgive it and move forward during May, June, or July.
I think that might actually be what ends up happening because at this point,
Correct.
to your credit too, even though it would be a big price tag on the government, we've done it for big companies before in the past. We as taxpayers, for example, have bailed out. We could go through the different industries, banking, automobiles, whatever you want to say. And in fact, some people are saying that those companies still owe us for that bailout. So when it comes to that too, how does the U.S. kind of deal with that big price tag? Is that something that will just go towards the deficit? Is that something that they'll eventually have to pay back? Or is that just something that we don't worry about once it's done?
I don't think we worry about it. I think it's time for the American worker to be bailed out. We've, like you said, in different times of economic downturn, recession, the U.S. government always steps up to bail out an industry, a business industry. Now let's step out to bail out and support the American worker that has been working forever.
And I think that the American people would kind of agree with that type of sentiment, too, because even when we talk about the current bailouts that are on the table, whether you talk about the airlines, the cruise ships, I don't care about the airline executives. I don't care about Carnival Cruise Lines necessarily. I know that they employ a lot of people, but I'm more concerned about those people that they are employing right now. So if it were to come to a bailout, say, for example, let's use Carnival Cruises as an example, would there be stricter type of restrictions and regulations on how that money is spent and stuff like that? Or would it just be, once again, kind of putting them in the position that they were before this outbreak so that they can continue business?
I think that there should be restrictions on that money this time going forward. I still don't understand, after we've come out of the economic downturn previously, why these industries do not have some sort of corporate sort of back balance of money for these times. We constantly tell an individual you need to have an emergency fund, you need to have an emergency account for down, economic times, if you lose your job, if you have a serious health issue. Why do businesses and industries not have the same thing? Why, as soon as something happens, coronavirus is taking over in our lives pretty quickly, but it's been 30 days. And now all of a sudden, here comes the airline industry right now, immediately requesting $50 billion. So they have nothing in reserves. They have no reserve accounts anywhere. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It is kind of an interesting topic too, because, for example, even
Mhm.
banks are required to have some cash on hand. And it seems like
Exactly.
right now what we're seeing with these big corporations is that they didn't have those same type of regulations. Of course, we learned the hard way from banks, but it's still not necessarily something that should be taken for granted. But before I let you go too, I just want to ask very broadly, is there anything else that you would like to see from this administration when it comes to addressing this issue from an economic standpoint?
I think that on a going forward basis, this should be with this administration and going forward, these should be administrative goals that we always have in place because economic downturns are cyclical. This won't be the first, nor will it be the last. So we should always have plans in place to help the American consumer because as we see, that is where everything begins and ends. If the consumer can't buy, if they can't take care of their bills, that's when the economy collapses. So it's more about the consumer than these big industries.
I think that's well said because, I mean, it's a cliche, but the economy is a living thing. And if those people who are the living individuals that make it up can't spend their money, the economy will quite literally come to a standstill. But Jennifer, I really appreciate you coming on, breaking down the markets for us and what will happen next. Thank you once again.